He's just such an enchanting actor. Is Edie a person of integrity, or is she up to something too? The tenderness and vulnerability that Kevin brought to playing that scene. I thought, oh, look at that. They did it. A friendship is born. He's going to follow her into the unknown.
Hi, everybody. I would love to welcome Joy Gregory to the podcast today. Joy is a writer for When Calls the Heart, and we have just recently learned is the new season 13 showrunner. Joy, I'm so excited to have you here, and congratulations. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Stephanie. Great to be here. Great to see you all.
So, congratulations on the news. Could you share with us a little bit about what it means to move from a writer to the showrunner and what some of those responsibilities are?
Sure. The showrunner is someone who oversees and shepherds the storytelling from the idea phase all the way through the production drafts of the script, and also oversees the production. I partner with our amazing producer team, but I am representing the scripts and the storytelling throughout production as well.
Got it.
And that's throughout the season. So I'm leading storytelling sessions every day, kind of guiding the conversation, making decisions like, oh, yeah, that sounds like the right version of the story for this character. I'm overseeing all of the scripts, weighing in on everyone's drafts, giving them notes, and representing the show in all production conversations. Although there are certain elements of the procedures for writing staffs that alter from show to show. For instance, I've been on shows like Madam Secretary, where the writer of the episode really gets to produce their episode. So I was the only one, not the showrunner, representing my episode in production meetings. And that's just a culture shift from show to show. It so happens that on When Calls the Heart, we've been on the air for so long, and our production team is such a well-oiled machine, and they're so competent and talented that we choose not to have each individual writer really intensely involved and flying to set and being on set every day. So we're able to just stay focused on the writer's room and getting the scripts out.
Do you do most of that remotely, Joy?
Yes, because we are very blessed to have some wonderful Canadian writers, and actually work across two time zones right now. We have our writer's assistant is in Toronto. We also have one of our new writers who lives in New York City. So we have a 3-hour time span. But we also have two old favorites, Allie Devereaux and Liam Fernley in British Columbia. And the rest of us are in Los Angeles. And what we've chosen to do is, though the Canadian writers, of course, are always online, very nicely, my number 2 writer, the second in command, David Gray, hosts the LA writers in his home on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we break up the week and meet in person for two days of the week. So it's nice.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's nice that you guys are able to do that.
It is. It makes a big difference. And I insisted, based on my own experience on previous shows with out-of-town writers, I asked, and I was so grateful that we were able to afford this, to fly everyone in to be in Los Angeles together for our first week. So I've learned that spending just that 1 week breathing the same air and seeing what each other look like outside of this little box pays dividends throughout the rest of the season. You just feel like you have a much more profound human relationship and understanding of everyone, all these great folks that we're telling all these stories with all season.
What a great idea. I mean, we're fortunate that we can, you and I can chat right now across several states, but there's nothing like being able to be in person and get to know somebody. And again, that I'm sure will pay off dividends for you guys moving forward. So that's pretty cool to hear about. You were able to first write episode 6.
Yes.
Correct? Yes.
That's right.
And so starting a little bit lighthearted, we joke about the gift that Allie brought the fans in season 11 with what we call the shirtless scene. And then you outdid yourself by bringing us this dream sequence in episode 6, where we get to see Elizabeth fighting something that she hasn't fought before, an illness on the show, and working through that cold. So, can you talk about those fever dreams and your idea for bringing that to episode 6?
Well, I've my favorite episodes of many series that I've loved are the ones that kind of break open the format of the show for some exceptional sequences or scenes, or plays with the form of the storytelling. The special standalone episodes, a prime example that everyone always cites is the Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode when it was all musical. The people could only sing. I always love those. So we don't do a lot of that on When Calls the Heart, but we did find that the tone of the show could tolerate opening it up for some fantasy sequences and dream sequences that are kind of affected and heightened by this wonderful device of the historical fact that cold medicine often had opiates in it
Yeah.
in the early 20th century. This was an unregulated and lawful use of what is now considered a class one mind-altering substance. So, we can't during a time of prohibition on Hallmark, we choose never to show even casual drinking. I think the men drink beer in the
Yeah.
saloon, but that's as far
Yeah.
as we go. We never show people drinking to excess. So this felt like within the language of the show, we can have Elizabeth, our wonderful pure lead, get
Uh-huh.
altered. So it was irresistible. And we let ourselves think like, well, what might she fantasize about? And we got a little
Mhm.
feverish
Mhm.
during her
I
fever dream.
love that you guys made that addition and gave Nathan that opportunity to have his own little dream as well.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Where he wasn't taking the medicine, but he did have a fever. So it
He
was his
did.
own literal fever dream. But
So, one of the great additions to this season was bringing on Jacob Shumay to play Oliver Grant.
yeah.
And I have heard nothing but amazing response to that, to him coming on, the idea of young love, watching that story develop. In episode 6, we get to see where Allie and Oliver are in the woods a bit, learning more about what's going on with McGinty. But what was so amazing was that vulnerability that you wrote about, where we learn about Jacob's past and where Allie has an opportunity to share about her past to Ollie now. Can you talk a
Yeah.
little bit about that storyline in episode 6?
Yeah, absolutely. We just love those actors together. Jada and Jacob are so wonderful, and Jada's grown into, she started out a charming young child, and we've watched her grow up, and she's become a very skilled young actor, a
Mhm.
young adult actor. So we're really excited to explore more of what she can play, and as her heart is maturing and starting to get connected to this young man. And I love, of course, I've watched all of the romance series. I started out on Felicity, so I love nothing more than a young woman who is making the wrong choice, kind of being seduced by superficial flash. And I'm thinking of Wyatt.
Mhm.
At first, and then kind of the slow burn of the guy who is your friend at first, and then you start to slowly realize this guy is really he's
Mhm.
a person of substance. He understands me. We share things that are more meaningful than she does with Wyatt. And so we talked early on about what are Oliver's circumstances, and it led us to the story early in the season where it turns out he lied about having a high school education. And so we had already talked about his background and thought, well, wouldn't it be great if he and Allie discover that they share this something in common, which is to have an incarcerated parent? And I loved and fought for that the first time he brings it up when they're hiking in the woods, she can't she
Mhm.
know I wanted the scene to just go out on her going, do I tell him that I actually share this too? I don't want to yet. I'm not ready
Mhm.
yet.
Mhm.
I don't want to share that piece of myself. And I like honoring the way people tiptoe toward each other.
Yeah.
And it was only after she kind of had this win with Lucas on the radio show that had been informed by the work they had done together that she felt like, I think I'm starting to trust you, and I think I want to share with you that you're not the only one who has
Mhm.
this thing in the past, and I've decided it doesn't mean that we're bad people.
Mhm.
And boy, that played so well on screen. I
Mhm.
was really pleased. It really felt like, oh, and I remember the last line I typed in the scene is when he shares his cupcake with her and says it's more fun when you share that they kind of eat the cupcake together and a friendship is born.
Yeah.
And boy, when I saw the dailies, I thought, oh, look at that. They did it. A friendship is born.
That was directed by Martin Wood, correct?
That's right.
And Martin shared with me, about how they chose to have Allie's back kind of to Ollie, and just that, that vulnerability. Okay, I'm going to tell you.
Yes.
The way that it was delivered was just so real and authentic. And it was so nice to see that next step in their relationship. So, a really sweet moment. And
Um,
I learned, in one of your other podcasts that you had written for Felicity. I remember finding Felicity years ago and binged it, could not stop watching it,
uh,
loved the way that, love was developed in that series. So that's pretty amazing to hear that you wrote for Felicity as well.
Yeah, yeah, seasons 3 and 4. Yeah, the show holds up. I enjoyed sharing that with my daughter as well.
Yeah. So, continuing on, speaking about Allie, in episode 6, we have another dining table moment between Allie and Nathan.
Yes.
Yes. And so, one of the highlights for us in season 11 was when Allie comes back from the prison and her and Nathan are sitting around the dining table and have, that moment where he commits to her, which he's always been committed to her, but shares that verbally with her that you and I are forever, and builds her up. And then in this episode, we have that moment where Nathan says all the right things about her worth. Can you talk about writing that moment?
Oh, this is one of this is why TV is written by a room full of writers. We were just talking through the story, and Beth Stewart, one of our wonderful writers had been on the show several seasons before I joined, she shared a story about how her now adult daughter still quotes that line that Beth's husband said to their daughter when she was young. You don't need a boy to show you who you are.
Yeah.
And she said it was just this throwaway line that her dad said, and it just went gling in her of like truth. The truth rang in her, and it just set her on a path. And I thought, well, as soon as she said that line, I thought that has to be in the script. And I think I had to fight it a few times. There were people who were like, "Do we need this scene?" Or there were some questions about it, and I held firm, like it's gonna
Mhm.
play. I promise
Mhm.
you, it's gonna be a good moment. And what I love about this show is not every scene has to move the plot forward, and in
Right.
fact, frequently doesn't.
Yeah.
That you can just let people talk to each other and kind of slowly reveal their hearts to each other. That's my
Mhm.
favorite kind of writing. So I
Yeah.
loved that scene too. Thank you.
And you've learned, that we love callbacks. We love being able to see, and even though that was not necessarily a callback,
Mhm.
those moments allow us to immediately think back to even that previous scene where they sat around the table
Yeah,
and make those connections. And so it even brings more richness to a moment like that. So,
I love that. Love the appreciation of the history of the show.
one of my favorite storylines this season was learning about Angela's journey.
Yeah.
And in episode 6, we've got Minnie and Joseph who make the decision to tell Angela about the tour at the Schwartzman School. And it was incredibly powerful and revealing with Angela's struggles and even Minnie's emotions that she's going through. Can you talk about the decision to share this story in season 12?
Yes, my daughter is a junior at Parsons, the new school right now in New York City. She's actually abroad this semester. So, 3 years ago, we were going through that incredibly high stakes, fraught experience of senior year of high school, when it feels like, even though this isn't actually true, parents, it feels like absolutely everything about your kid's future is on the line. It's going to be decided this year. There's no going back. It feels like I've never heard of transferring. We've got to get this right. Uh, it's just so high stakes. And it's high stakes not because we're denying that transferring is possible, but because your little chickadee is about to fly the nest, and you're
Right.
and I was just not sure if she was ready. My daughter, like everybody's kids, lived through lockdown. She was in
Yeah.
10th grade, ninth grade, and 10th grade for lockdown. And I just was so scared for her. Do you have the skills? Are you going to be able to talk to adults like you're a mature baked person? Are you going to be able to live on your own? And it led to tension. It led to emotional conversations. It led to her testing boundaries. It led to, I mean, love in action. It's just such a keen, fraught year. And I flashed on that when I was writing that dialogue. I think it ended up getting a little shifted. In my first draft, it was a little more intense when Minnie is like, "Where's your shawl? We're leaving for the train, and you don't have your shawl. How do I know you're going to be able to take care of yourself and keep yourself warm?"
Mhm.
And it's a fight about a shawl, but it's also a fight about what is your future, and are you ready for it?
Yeah.
And how can I support you? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's been that storyline throughout the season has been just amazing. So much. I mean, the authenticity of it, the reality of it, the extra cast that was brought in at the Schwartzman School, and the fact that I got to hear from Natasha that that was not necessarily something that they had even done before, and just how that all played out was just amazing to watch.
I loved that Siobhan, our Divine, our director of that episode, was so sensitive and so up for casting non-sighted actors
Yeah.
when Angela is sighted. And we had some special systems in place to make the experience as comfortable and supportive as it needed to be for their needs. And it was such a gift to be able
Yeah.
to include those performers in that
Yeah.
episode.
Yeah. Yeah. A highlight for me. So that's so
Thank you. Me
neat.
too.
You also got to co-write episodes 10 and 11, which another amazing move, making that transition. You getting to write with Lindsay. You've written with Lindsay before.
Yes.
So can you speak about that partnership and what it was like to write those two episodes together?
Yes. Here's the reality. The reality is we write on television, and this differs also, excuse me, this also differs from show to show. But most television is collaboratively written, especially in terms of coming up with the stories, even through breaking the outline, which is really dialing in what are the specific beats within the scene? How does the scene start? How does it end? It's all collectively done. So when you ask, what was it like to work with Lindsay? I feel like, oh my gosh, I worked with her on every single episode, like every beat of every episode. I felt like I had her on speed dial, and we were always in touch. But it was the episode 11 especially felt like such a key episode for the
Mhm.
life of the series, and certainly a key episode for the season. And it was an absolute honor and a pleasure to share the writing duties of that very intimately with Lindsay, because also what happens is toward the end of the season, some of the lower level writers just start to depart naturally. It's their contract comes to an end,
Mhm.
and so there's fewer soldiers standing by the end. We kept renaming our group chat, and I think at that point the name was The Last Detail.
That's awesome.
Yeah. um And so it becomes increasingly intimate, and you're also kind of mirroring the experience of the season of the show. Like it's building to this conclusion, and we feel the end coming, and the emotions are running
Yes.
high, and we're throwing our arms around each other every time we pass a milestone toward we're gonna make it, we're gonna get through the end of the season. So though I felt like I collaborated with Lindsay throughout, it was we were in the trenches together, and there was a lot of discussion across our executives and our cast, and among us the writers, about what is the best ending that we want to build to. And at one
Mhm.
point there was a discussion of, should we end the whole season on episode 11?
Mhm.
And we almost threw the whole deck of cards in the air to shift that one up and come up with a different episode 11. And thankfully I think it all looks inevitable in hindsight, but I think it works really well
Yes.
with
Yes.
episode 12 just kind of moving the story beyond episode
Mhm.
11.
Yeah, that's amazing. Nathan in episode 10 expresses surprise that Hargraves has approved his promotion, which I think we were all surprised
Uh-huh.
that Hargraves is actually going to give Nathan a promotion.
Yes.
Can you share what went into the decision to promote Nathan and how it might impact additional storylines, or how it even this season did?
Yes, I was racking my brains when I saw this question in the list you shared with me, and I thought, oh gosh, why did we do that? And the best answer, according to my recollection, is that knowing that we were building toward Elizabeth feeling that she absolutely had to, for the sake of little Jack, relocate at least temporarily to Cape Fullerton, we just wanted to start inserting things that would increase the stakes of
Mhm.
what Nathan would be sacrificing if he chose to
Wow.
follow her.
Wow.
So that was one of the reasons, and I think there was other conversation about it, but I
Mhm.
honestly can't remember.
Well, and it was interesting how that even with Ollie and who, tried to tank the tests, and we
Yeah.
learned, which was such an amazing move in that it wasn't just about Allie, that he missed his childhood and he's found a place now. But at the same time, he kind of gets a promotion of sorts. And we were wondering, well, maybe that's because, well, maybe now Ollie, I'm like, well, I don't know if Ollie's quite ready for that role yet or not while
Right.
Nathan is away. But, we were trying to piece that together, but equally excited that Nathan did get a promotion. So,
Yes, yes. And though it wasn't in the same episode as graduation, it did suit the kind of end of the season feeling of like people are stepping up, they're stepping out, they're moving on, they're changing, they're growing.
yeah. A favorite surprise for many of us was the addition of Edie Martel this season. What a great addition to When Calls the Heart. And in episode 10, she makes the bold move and stands up to McGinty with a lot on the line, right? And Lucas is both concerned that she's done that, but you can tell that he's impressed that she's made that decision. So, can you talk about Lucas and Edie's dynamic? Any favorite moments that you had this season between the two of them?
Oh my gosh, so many. I just loved watching Chris and Miranda in their scenes together. They're both such lovely actors, and found a really lovely chemistry together. I loved her line, well. That was a favorite of mine. I loved their card playing scenes and their kind of flirtation through code, which is, a romantic trope, but delightfully played by both of them.
Yes.
I loved that we managed to, or at least I hope we did, I think we did, um, imply in a few places, wait a minute, is Edie a person of integrity, or is she up to something
Yes.
too? And knowing that we have had some devious women come to town in Hope Valley in the past, this was not going to be that. And her standing up to McGinty was a great moment of realizing, oh no, she is a person of quite rare
Yes.
integrity.
Yes.
And then kind of flipping on the suspicion one last time for, wait a minute, was she part of these gold coins being hidden? Oh
Mhm.
no, don't worry,
Yeah.
audience. She's
Yeah.
just as great as we thought.
Well, and another favorite moment for me was episode 12 when she's hired and fired so that they
Yeah,
can dance.
I know.
Very clever. Um, really fun to watch.
Yeah,
So
everyone had great ideas for all the sweet romantic moments between them. Yeah, everyone loved pitching stuff for them.
Lucas's quick, you're fired, right? It was so
Yes,
cute. So
it was so charming.
you wrote episode 6 and 10, which means you wrote for Georgie McGill in
That's
both
right.
episodes. So, can you talk about being able to welcome Melissa Gilbert and that experience of bringing Georgie McGill to life and that budding romance, or I should say, bringing back a romance from the past with Bill Avery?
Yes, I love an old flame story. Those are always irresistible to me as a viewer and as a writer. I loved how charged it is when you
Yeah.
run into an ex. And uh, I can't remember how we found out that we could get Melissa. I don't remember if that was our wonderful studio saying, hey, how about this idea? Wouldn't that be great on the show? And we jumped onto it, or if we thought of it organically. In any case, I just loved seeing those first dailies of their first scene together when Bill walks in and he's struck to realize who she is. Um, to see Melissa Gilbert's twinkle in her eyes, she's just such an enchanting actor. And of course, part of it is how much we love her from Little House on the Prairie. I grew up seeing her as in that show and recognizing the history of that show because When Calls the Heart feels born under the star of Little House on
Mhm.
the Prairie
Yes.
in terms of its tone, its historical setting, the values that it espouses, and its small town rural life. And so to connect with it in such a human way with the star, the former kid star who now brings her twinkling smile to this autumnal love story with Bill was quite a treat.
And they may have had the kiss of the season. I
I
mean,
know. Yes. We pitched that early. I can't remember if it was Jack Wagner or us who started calling it a 007 kiss. That was how we referred to it. Yes. Good one.
And I hear that there's hints that maybe she will be back in season 13.
We love Melissa and we are very much hoping to bring her back.
This season felt like, and it felt like we got to see a lot more of the kids in Hope Valley this
Mhm.
season. So many moments with our littles and then our teens who were growing up. And can you talk a little bit about the idea of how you could bring more of those youth stories into the season?
Well, I'm not sure that we were terribly strategic about it. Entering season 12 of a series, I really just paid attention to the instructions I was given. And Lindsay, who I have a long history with, we worked together on my second job. I think it was just her third job in the industry, a wonderful show called Joan of Arcadia
Yeah.
on CBS in 2003 and 4. Um, she just said, listen, a fourth to a fifth of our stories are going to be for the youngs, and she was full of ideas, and I followed her lead, and I'm just amazed at how talented our little actors have grown up to be teen actors as well. So we were able to tell lots of stories with them, and I love that anytime I pitch something, I've written for several teen shows, and some of them a little more edgy, certainly than this one. And I noticed that I had a little bit of a learning curve with what works on the show because I would pitch scenes of kids like kicking against the boundaries a little bit, and often it was gently explained to me like. We don't do that in Hope Valley. They respect their elders, and I found you can tell great kid stories within those rules, you know?
Yeah.
It's certainly what I appreciate from my daughter at home, and I love telling those stories for our viewers.
Episode 10 had us learning about Emily trying to figure out what she was going to do. Had a wonderful conversation with Elizabeth.
Yeah.
That was a highlight for me to hear, to see that Emily has been in Hope Valley from the beginning and is now having this conversation. What favorite moments did you have with the kids this season?
Oh gosh. I mean, so many with Allie, watching her, the stuff with her birthday dance.
Hmm.
Um, there was also, oh God, that I mean, we've already talked about it, so I hate to spend our time bringing it up again, but my husband's a cinematographer, and I was watching dailies, and I froze that scene of Allie talking to Nathan at the table, and she was just looking at her dad with such an open face. I froze the scene, and I said, "Look at our beautiful actor," and he said, "Oh, that's amazing."
Yeah.
Um, yeah, just when they're opening themselves to each other. But I did love, because I empathized with this, Emily's anguish at not feeling like she had a path to walk,
Hmm.
passion. And we told a similar story for Allie at the beginning of the season too,
Yes.
but then she really found her passion. So being honest about feeling lost at that
Hmm.
age
Hmm.
was a story I loved being able to tell in
Hmm.
Hope Valley. And of course, having Elizabeth sort of walk her toward, you are doing something important for the
Yes.
community. You
Yes.
just didn't feel valuable to you
Hmm.
because you're interested in it.
Hmm.
Um, I'm trying to remember anything with Highland and watching the baseball game. The cutaways to him watching listening to the baseball game on the radio were
Hmm.
so dear to me. And I mean, we don't even script lines for her, but when Goldie laughs her golden little giggle, it just gladdens my heart when I'm watching cuts. I mean, I love all of our young actors. I feel like I could come up with more, but I won't make you
Yeah.
wait while I try to come up with them.
Well, if any more come, you can feel
I
free to
will.
bring them up.
Sure.
So, episode 10 was our first time this season seeing Nathan and Lucas in a scene together. And so hopeful that we get to see Nathan and Lucas more together in the future. Can you talk about, did that just like play out because it played out? Was there any conversation about when is the right moment to bring Nathan and Lucas together? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I love how they work together with the history that they share. I love when they're sort of begrudgingly supporting each other or open-heartedly supporting each other, or, still, wrestling a little with old feelings. Um, we had talked about lots of different ways to get to a Lucas Nathan scene, and it just so happened it took longer to get there in this season. There was no real plan. Um, there was a lot of, oh, we wanted to also tell this story, but we just don't have room for it. The scripts have to be a certain page number,
Yeah.
and harsh decisions have to be made. Dreams are big when you're breaking the episode and writing the outline. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to have this moment, and then reality sets in when you see that page count.
Yeah. The
So,
joys of the page count, right?
oh, yes.
Well, we got to see glimpses of little Jack and the potential for this illness where it was going. I remember when the four of them were sitting around the dinner table, Nathan, Elizabeth, Allie, and little Jack, and he asks for more stew. And, probably we didn't catch it then when he's asleep in the school. But knowing now, you guys there was so much research that went into this story and so many conversations about, are we going to do this? Are we not? But one thing I would love to hear about is, I feel like this was a bit contingent on, can Highland pull this off? And so, can you talk about those conversations? Was there a plan B? If, I mean, he did amazing this season, but my goodness,
Yeah.
what a gamble.
Well, I don't think we thought about we definitely didn't have a plan B. We
Okay.
simply trusted that Highland working with Peter DeLuise was going to
Yes.
be just fine.
Yes.
And we absolutely took off running and didn't look back. And we had no reason to be concerned. His work was so great. And Peter does, you would think that it would be about bringing Highland to a very somber place, but I learned when I was on set that Peter actually made it feel really joyful. And
Mhm.
I think he had a machine that made fart noises, for between takes, and just made it feel safe and welcoming and fun.
Yeah.
And that allowed Highland to give us a really
Mhm.
beautiful, heartfelt performance in those scenes.
Amazing what he pulled off as such,
Yeah.
as a young actor. You talked about the baseball scenes, which was that whole the way that it was, brought together, and then little Jack sitting there and having his little upbeat moments, but then being able to turn around and just portray somebody who is just really fighting a battle right now was stellar for Highland. He really, really did an amazing job.
Yeah, it was very effective. Yeah, I agree.
I loved how the entire community of Hope Valley came together to help little Jack, Elizabeth, and Nathan. I mean, you really did a fantastic job this season of slowly progressing it to where when this happened, that it made sense that Nathan was going to be right there in the middle of it, right? There was no shock in that. It was he was a part of this as well. We have
Mhm.
Mike and May going to Toronto. We have Faith providing the medical care, Minnie making meals, and then even Rosemary helping with that. Can you share about the plan to bring the whole community together to support this particular storyline?
Yeah, it's the headline of the show. The community comes together, and we were so concerned that we had created this wonderful high stakes situation of a diabetic collapse for little Jack that gave us such a heart-stopping conclusion to episode 10 with the horrible news of the diagnosis, which was at that time a death sentence.
Yeah.
Um, and then we confronted episode 11 and thought, okay, we created a wonderful high stakes situation, but we have 5 acts of storytelling to fill. What are they doing? It can't be
Mhm.
5 acts of we feel terrible. We're waiting for the medicine to come. Hope the medicine comes. We had to activate it. And I remember when we came up with the idea for why don't we say that they have to have this quest to come up with a minimum number of patients in order to get access to the delivery of the insulin? That gave us like, oh yes, active. We have an activity for everyone to do, and that just activates all the Hope Valley machinery of seasons past of we're going to chip in, we're going to throw down, we're going to make phone calls, we're going to reach out, we're going to pull this person in, pull that person in. And we also came up with this was Lindsay. She fought for this, that she just had a vision that 1 act of a joyful baseball game would not be jarring, that it would be welcome, that it would
Mhm.
bring tonal balance and relief to the episode. And she was so right.
So right. So right. And again, another community moment where everybody comes together. I love that the radio was brought into it. That Oliver's out, scouting it out and being able to deliver it back to little Jack to be able to hear it. Cavan, who, plays Lee Coulter, and his, throwing the popcorn everywhere. It was definitely needed in that episode to provide a little bit of levity in that moment. So very
Oh,
good.
speaking of favorite kid moments, another great one that I loved this season was Angela basically inventing sports casting by saying like, what do we say now? Just talk. Well, and then watching Toby, who was so adorable, like, I'm just gonna come up with some sportscaster patter here for you. Fill the dead
And
dead air.
Flo and Molly are in the mercantile, and you can hear through the radio where Toby makes up the name, the Hope Valley Hopesters.
I know.
And they're
So
kind of
good.
like, okay, it works.
Go with it.
So, so many people on this show, so many of the cast are extremely talented when it comes to the comedic parts of it. I remember even visiting with Martin Wood, and he said, "You wouldn't believe how funny Aaron Krakow is." Like, and just so funny. And I love that throughout the season we have, and you guys honor those comedic moments. And so it's fun to see those with, Aaron and Pascal as they're doing, their Lucy and Ethel moments this season. But another thing, they can turn and do the drama like nobody's business.
Yes.
And we got to see a powerful moment when Rosemary sat down with Elizabeth, and then Elizabeth scripted that letter. Can you talk a little bit about that letter?
Yes, that was another like, oh, we got to find active storytelling. What if she has to write a letter to argue for her son's life and she's frozen and who's going to help her? Her best friend. And I've talked about this on another podcast, but the I remember exercise is
Mm,
an idea, is an exercise I did in a writing class years ago, and I still use it to just sort of get myself going on
yeah,
something. If I
yeah.
just want to sort of unlock some memories, images, specifics, because writing is in the details. The details are what make it come alive. So I thought, oh, that's a good strategy for Rosemary to just get her over the paralysis of the stakes of this letter and
Mhm.
just start the flow of images and moments.
Yeah.
And it was such a satisfying way to activate Rosemary's friendship and help Elizabeth in this moment of true crisis.
Yeah, it was so good. Another friendship that we've seen, that was not so much a friendship from the beginning, was Bill and Nathan.
Right.
And I had a big wish this year, and that wish was for Rosemary and Nathan to be able to spend more time together now that Nathan and Elizabeth are together. And the other one was to see that relationship between Bill and Nathan grow. And one of my favorite scenes in the entire season was that conversation between Nathan and Bill. Can you talk a little bit about how that came to be?
I now I'm asking myself, was this Aaron's pitch? The whole
I've
scene.
heard that there was a conversation between Aaron, Kevin, and Jack,
Yeah,
and that they
yeah,
kind of helped collaborate on that
yeah,
moment.
yeah. They have offered all three of them beautiful details
Mhm,
throughout the season. They really bring all of their creativity to the work on the show, and it pays off.
mhm,
And so I believe Aaron requested this scene and suggested that Elizabeth witness it on the stairs. And as a way for Elizabeth, for us to see that Elizabeth understands this isn't just her Calvary. This is really hard on Nathan too, and though he's not showing it to her, he is suffering right along with her.
yeah.
Um, and I was very, very moved when I saw the tenderness and vulnerability that Kevin brought to playing that scene. And I love that on a show where our Mounties are so tough and they pulled guns on the Garrison gang, that they were able to just as readily and unselfconsciously open their hearts to each other,
Mhm,
which is a great thing to model for everyone and especially men in our
yeah,
culture.
yeah. Yeah, it was that episode, one of the best episodes of When Calls the Heart from the beginning. So many people have talked about how amazing episode 11 was. So, wow. Um, Episode 12, we have some a big word that I kept hearing from different cast and crew was there's going to be some unexpected things. And so we had lots of little unexpected moments. We've talked about, Lucas and Edie, Lucas firing Edie, the fun moment with the treasure map. Um, Nathan's reaction, like, I'm a Mountie. We're talking about a treasure map, right? And
Yeah.
ink. And then another one that kind of threw us off was that Elizabeth received a letter from Charlotte Thornton. Can you talk about the decision that Charlotte Thornton is now in Cape Fullerton and is writing a letter to Elizabeth?
Yeah, we knew we wanted Elizabeth to be confronted with, am I doing everything that I can be doing with this new frightening situation in my life, which is that my son is dependent on this medication. And we thought, let's present Elizabeth first with the possibility that she could pull her life apart and do something perhaps arguably more responsible, which she senses Charlotte is implying in her letter for her grandson. But with Rosemary's support, kind of decides I'll make that decision when the time comes. And then by the end of Act 4, the time comes.
Yeah.
And our research showed that the early production of insulin, which was from animal pancreases from slaughterhouses, was wildly inconsistent. And up from one batch to another, diabetics could have, possibly devastating reactions to the varying dosage of it. And so we knew that historically we were justified in the batch that had come all the way from Toronto had not been effective. And effectively, little Jack had not had his insulin for a week. So we thought, I can't remember if we considered seriously for very long that perhaps Elizabeth's parents could be implying, we have access to the finest healthcare. Why aren't you coming here? We thought it was more of an emotional conflict for Elizabeth if it came from little Jack's grandmother.
Yeah.
It carried less baggage.
Yeah.
She would have to struggle less with like, oh, am I letting my parents who I've avoided taking care of me since I declared my independence, am I going to give in and let them fix this problem for me? We didn't want to play that aspect of it, of the decision.
Yeah.
So it felt a little more neutral. And then we also love Brooke Shields' performance as Charlotte Thornton, and could not resist the opportunity of suggesting that we might have an opportunity to make an appeal to Brooke if she wanted to come back to the show.
Yeah, that's cool. That led to, the injection failed. That led to a really powerful moment when Minnie approached Elizabeth outside of her house. One of my favorite lines of the season when she says, the miracle isn't that someday it goes away. The miracle is that you learn you can handle it. And I really feel like that line in some ways summed up the whole season, and what Hope Valley is about. Can you talk about that moment, that performance, that line?
Yeah. I remember that line came to us when we were talking, and it was one of those moments of like, yeah, there it is. There's the nut of this whole episode. And I agree with you, arguably the whole season. Um, it as always, again, this is why you write with a whole staff. Get a room full of writers together, and you've got a room full of usually damaged children, people who are walking around with childhood wounds, people who've been through something. Something has to challenge you to make you want to sit down and tell stories for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And so it felt like a really informed pitch from several of us that the fantasy at first when trauma finds you is, well, I just have to fix this. I just have to get through this. And then it's going to be behind me. And then we're going to get back on track. We just lived through the Los Angeles fires. And you really collide with the human nature's tendency to feel like we're gonna restore.
Yeah.
And it's a process to very painfully confront, no, a lot of things are gone forever.
Yeah.
And you have to come to terms with it. And it's the first phase of many.
Hmm.
realizing the past is gone. And,
Hmm.
every day the past is gone. It is the human condition. And yet it is when trauma utterly cuts ties with a future that you thought was yours, it
Hmm.
is a very keen emotional experience to begin the process of understanding I have to let go of fantasizing that that's ever going to be restored, and I have to confront my new future. And the hope that Minnie has to offer is you're going to learn how to deal with it.
Yeah.
I found really I don't know what was going on in my life, but I came across, just some pithy comment a friend of mine made in a post online, and and it was just a casual throwaway, and much like that Beth Stewart line I was talking about that rang in her child for the rest of her life, it rang in me, and it was just, terrible things are going to happen in your life, and you're going to survive them.
Yeah. Yeah. I, but I love that Minnie said she knows and she says, but Angela soars. And she's
Yes,
letting Elizabeth know there's light at the end of this.
yes.
Like there, little Jack is going to soar.
That's
Um,
right. Yes. And that was one of those moments like we didn't plan it, but yeah, payoff for the whole Angela story. Like, yes, she started out not being sure Angela could handle it, and she learned Angela could handle it, and now she has that to give
yeah,
Elizabeth in this
yeah,
moment.
yeah.
Yeah. So those little moments of everything coming together, that's so thrilling at the end of a season.
Nathan and Allie's decision to go with Elizabeth and little Jack to Cape Fullerton. Can you talk about the significance of the moment in Nathan and Elizabeth's love story?
Yeah, as I've said before, we couldn't give you the proposal you've been waiting for, but this felt like the next best thing. Like
Mm.
he throws down. If she has to pull her life apart, he's ready to. Sorry, if I don't know what that was. Let me start over. Um, yeah, if Elizabeth has to pull her life apart, he's ready to pull his apart too and follow her. He's going to follow her into the unknown.
Yeah,
And that's just about the biggest emotional commitment you can make to someone. Where
yeah.
you go, I go. Another line pitched by Jack, Aaron, and Kevin when they were talking about their story in this finale. Um, so I, at one point we were thinking it's got to be Elizabeth's gonna go, and she says we had pitched a reason that Allie really needed to stay in town, and she was going to say we have to be realistic. You have to stay here with Allie. I have to go with little Jack. We'll see each other soon. It's gonna be okay.
Mm.
It just we wanted the big romantic moment at the end.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
we thought, let's make that season 13's problem. And I have to say, I love how we're dealing with that setup. So,
That's exciting. And Elizabeth addressed that when she's reading, we hear her reading the letter to Nathan and she's in the car and she
yeah,
talks about I can't ask you to do that.
right.
And she knows what type of a commitment that would be for both him and Allie to make that move. And then like that, he
Yeah.
shows up and Allie and talks about this is family. We stick together. This is what we do. It almost as if this is a no-brainer. Like
Yes.
this is who we are. Like this is
Yeah.
who we are now. Um,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
pretty
what made it
powerful.
so satisfying, emotional. Yeah.
Yeah.
Romantic.
So, as the new showrunner, what can you tease about what might be ahead for Hope Valley? Anything?
Oh, there's some changes in Hope Valley. Um, you know, I'm looking over the few that I've talked about before. We're definitely looking forward to continuing to explore Allie and Oliver's friendship together. I love that it's a friendship,
Yeah.
and and we've had those friendships that sort of eventually became romances, but We're gonna watch them kind of getting to know their feelings. They're sort of like the last to know about their own feelings, which feels very true to the experience of being 17.
Oh yeah.
Um, I'm excited to explore how Minnie can grow and find out she's capable of more than she ever thought.
Mm,
And at first find out that she wants a little more from her life. And but then we have a situation for her that's really going to challenge her as a parent. And we're gonna see some new kind of ferocious devotion from her.
mm, got it.
And I'm excited about that. We've got a great case for Nathan and Bill to explore that's going to have some very emotional ties and surprising ties to Hope Valley. And we have an event that's going to definitely activate that community spirit of Hope Valley in a way that's going to continue throughout the season.
Cool. And we will start potentially in Cape Fullerton.
Well, we're still tuning in how much time we want to spend there. Certainly we don't want to we don't want to build a whole world that goes on that takes us away from Hope Valley for very long, but we also really want to honor the reality of their
Yeah,
choice, the
yeah.
consequences of their choice, regardless of how much we actually show of their
Mhm,
choice in action.
mhm. More Lucas and Edie.
Yes, definitely. We have something, David Gray, who also worked with me on Joan of Arcadia when I was with Lindsay. He's in the family, and I brought him on to join me. He pitched something for Lucas that just made us laugh at first and go like, "Are you serious?" And then also like, "Oh my God, that's perfect." So I'm so excited to unveil that for you.
Well, he can rope a calf now, so sky's
Yes.
the limit, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Oh, it's such a treat to write for Chris McNally
Yeah.
and to start to develop this new relationship with Edie that's going to allow him to take a chance on opening himself up again.
There we go. And
Yeah.
potentially a small change for Rosemary, possibly.
Yes. Yes. I know the tease language that you're quoting to me there. And yeah, it's a new element of her family life that
I
is
love
going
it.
to be fun
Love
for
it.
her and for Lee.
Well, we are trying to figure out how we're going to come to grips with waiting at least 9 months.
Yeah.
We didn't have to wait that long between season 11 and season 12. So, but we're excited. And again, Joy, first of all, thank you so much for being here.
Really my pleasure.
Congratulations on your new task as showrunner for season 13. We're
Thanks, Steph.
thrilled for you, and we're so excited for what's ahead for everybody in Hope Valley. So,
Oh, well, it's such an honor to be given the opportunity to lead this story forward. And as I said, I truly am touched by what the show means in so many passionate fans' lives. And I hope to honor it and rise to the occasion.
well, thank you so much. Joy, thank you for being here, and bye bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephanie. Bye-bye.